Nina Nastasia live in session with This Is Love, a track to be found on the Riderless Horse album, which came out last year. So, Nina, we have established that you are out on the road at the moment, and you've got a party of 3 in total, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, would you like to explain who the other 2 might be?
Yes, I have Joe Burney, who is, he is driver extraordinaire, and then and helping with merch and helping with sound sometimes. And then there's Tammy Hunter, who's an old friend of mine that I knew in my early 20s. And then we just lost touch for about 30 years. And then we got back in touch, and I said, "Oh, come with me and help me."
Wow.
So she did. And then she's helping with, she's kind of, she is, okay, well, she's kind of fills in all the gaps. And then there's Misha, who's the dog, who is my kind of psychiatric support dog. But then actually Tammy is Misha's emotional support human, probably.
Okay, so there's some relationships going on there.
Yeah.
And, Misha, I have to say, my dad had a dog called Toby. In fact, he called all his dogs Toby, I think.
Really? Do you know my grandma called all her dogs Pal?
Right, okay.
She was called Grandma Pal. She had about 7. Okay.
I suppose old habits die hard, don't they?
Right,
So
yeah.
if you want your dog to come to you, you just have to shout the same name for pretty much all your life. So
somebody will come over.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. But Toby had exactly the same striking blue eyes as Misha, and so I know some bands take babies on the road, and often it's because it's either the best or maybe even sometimes the only option for some. But as far as I can remember, there's only the wedding present who always take a pooch on the road with them, which is Doris. So can that be a problematic scenario? I would imagine it's easier to look after a baby than a pooch on the road.
Oh, yeah. Babies don't bite people.
Thanks for the warning.
Misha has not bitten anybody, but he does have this, for some reason he's starting to get on this attack mode and barks crazily, and I'm trying to pull it off like he's a bit of a, I shouldn't say this on the air, should I? Service dog, but he's clearly not really.
No, absolutely. Dogs are protective. Dogs are protective, and you find yourself in loads of different scenarios.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a little tricky. It's a little tricky taking him everywhere, but I love him. I always try to find a way.
Yeah.
And he's kind of pretty, so he gets away with a lot.
But, you do need a passport, don't you, for a pooch to go from one country to another?
Yes, he has a Portuguese passport.
But did you establish that kind of line through a DNA test, or is it just a guess?
No, I had to get him at one in Portugal.
Right. Okay.
But it's so difficult to figure out what you need from looking online to take a dog overseas. I think maybe the rules change constantly, so it was very hard. So I didn't really realize that it was possible for me to give him a passport, but it was.
You did it,
yeah.
And I could only imagine. I've got 3 pooches. We've got 3 pooches at the moment, and I can only imagine you, like me, every single coat that you've got has got poo bags in the pockets.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's responsible dog owner. That's
it's all about that.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, obviously, your first album was called Dogs, which was a long, long time ago. So you are in this for the long haul, aren't you?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Can we move off dogs then?
Sure.
I think we need to, don't we? So you toured opening for our mates Mogwai last year, didn't you?
Oh yes, that was super fun, and I took Misha to that too, actually. But yeah, that was fantastic.
Right. So they were your first live dates in 10 years. So as the opening date approached, how did you feel about it?
Oh, I was absolutely terrified to do it, and I was so nervous that I spoke to a friend of mine and is a musician as well, and he said, "Oh yeah, don't worry, nobody's going to be listening to you. You're opening. It's fine." So I felt a little better, and then I thought, "What do you mean nobody's going to be listening to me?" So then I wrote that a cappella song I sang, the first song I sang tonight. I wrote that to open the shows with, and but it ended up that I didn't need to do that. Mogwai's crowd was so incredible. I mean, it might have been because COVID was not as intense. People were going out, and it was like maybe everybody was super excited to hear music in general as well, and listen to the opener. But it was, it could have felt like it was my own show. It was amazing, and I was able to play in places I wouldn't have been able to do, and also those guys are just stellar human beings. They're great.
They most certainly are. God,
Yeah.
we know that. But two things here. That's a really brilliant way to start a show, just to disarm everybody and just to say, right, you need to be quiet because there's no racket going on behind me. It's just me and my voice, which is brilliant. So I applaud you for that. But also, I mean, I'll use a reference of Blackman Turner Overdrive, which is, Dickensian. But I mean, Mogwai's audience are a cerebral kind of bunch anyway, aren't they? They're not going to be jumping up and down and jocks all throwing each other and throwing beer over each other. So probably the perfect audience for you, even though the sounds that you make obviously are worlds apart.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, and so your album, like I say, Riderless Horse, it came out a year ago, and it was produced by your longtime friend and recording engineer, Steve Albini. So was being involved in this album after all this time, was it really important to work with Steve?
Oh, absolutely was. I mean, I've worked with him for pretty much every recording I've ever done has been with him. I mean, except for a couple, but and he's a very, very, very good friend. He's like family. So it was good to work with him after being away from it for so long, and so. And this was the first time that he really produced the record. So he was engineering, but he was also producing it. So we were working together in a little bit of a different capacity, and it was fantastic. It was really good.
I was going to ask you about that, because that in itself is unusual, because he's defiantly an engineer. He always says that, doesn't he? It's like,
yes.
I'm an engineer for hire, whether it be with Nirvana or whoever. And it's like, I'm not going to take too much credit for this. I've recorded it and I'll do a good job of it. But a producer, as we know, is a different beast altogether, because they do suggest arrangements or, bridges or whatever. And so obviously it's down to your relationship with Steve that he actually chose to step into that role.
Yeah, it was. It's funny because he's been throughout the records he's done. Like the more and more with me, more and more he would get more opinionated about things. So it was kind of leading up to this point, because he was becoming more and more involved in some decision making and bounce ideas off of him and that kind of thing. So it ended up kind of naturally heading that way. But
well, it worked.
But it was great. Yeah, it was really great. Yeah.
Fabulous. Okay. And so I'm really sorry about this. Just back onto dogs for a moment.
Yeah.
Inevitably. But there is a hugely successful musical called Cats. Now, have you thought about a companion piece? And I'll help you write it if you want.
I've never seen Cats.
Neither have I.
Would you help me? You haven't?
No.
Oh, so we're the perfect people to write dogs then.
I think so.
I think maybe we should do it.
Right, okay. Yeah, definitely. All right, that's the next project then. Brilliant. All right, Nina, it's been an absolute delight. And
thank you so much for having me here.
A real pleasure. And so you've just got one more song to do for us. So what are you going to do now?
I do, and it's unreleased, and it's called Hard Life. And